Holly, and I'm here with my summer wrap-up, and I'm also wearing a lipstick color I would never wear, but I bought Sophia Nygaard's collection and I thought I would try it out. It feels very weird on me, but it's fine. It's whatever. Yeah, it's a Murphy cat. I'm gonna try and film a video with the Murphy cat today. We're gonna see if it'll work out or not. I don't know. So what I do, Murphy, don't knock the tripod over. So what I do seasonally is I do a 5-book, not 10, 5-book seasonal TBR. And what I started doing this year was I also did a wrap-up of those 5 books, like kind of talking about them and ow, 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 ow. Your claws hurt, honey. Of them. And I might turn these also into like a quarterly stats thing and maybe talk about some of my favorite books in the quarter, because I like videos like that and I think it's fun. So maybe I'll start doing that next time. But for this one, this is my summer wrap up. So the 5 books that I had picked for my summer TBR were The Glamorous Double Life of Isabel Bookbinder, which by Holly McQueen, which was a TBR veteran, One Night in Scotland by Karen Hawkins, and Leia by Claudia Gray. I always want to say Cynthia Hand. It's Claudia Gray, which were picked from my TBR jar of physical books. And then Throwaway and Accidental Butterfly, which were picked from my ebook TBR jar. And I think Accidental Butterfly had the wrong title on it in the jar, but that's what it actually was. This summer, my spring TBR had actually gone really well. My summer TBR, not so well. So I actually did end up reading or attempting to read 4 of the books. So the one book that I did not read was Leia by Claudia Gray. And this is a story about Princess Leia. So I think it's when she's like, yeah, she's 16. This was gifted to me a few years ago, and honestly, I kept thinking about reading it and just never really wanting to. And I'm sure it's a perfectly fine book, and I know, like, I can't remember her first name, but Super Space Chick, she reads like a lot of the Star Wars books and stories and stuff. And I thought about keeping this on my TBR, but I think I'm honestly just gonna unhaul it because I'm probably never going to read this. I enjoy Star Wars, like I like the films and I like going to like the Star Wars stuff at Disney World and everything, but I don't feel the need to be like this immersed in the story. My dad has read some Star Wars books in the past, and if I thought maybe he would be interested in this, I would give it to him, but I don't think he would really want to read this. So I think I'm going to unhaul this, unfortunately. Like I said, I'm sure it's perfectly good. It's just not really for me. So then let's talk about the TBR veteran, which was The Glamorous Double Life of Isabel Bookbinder by Holly McQueen. And I've had this since I was like a sophomore or a junior in college. This book was actually also gifted to me by the same person. And this was gifted to me because I read Confessions of a Shopaholic in the Shopaholic series by Sophie Kinsella, and they're actually incredibly similar, but especially on the surface, it's, you know, a young 20-something British girl. It's chiclety, it's whatever. I can see why somebody would be like, oh, you like Shopaholic, you would like this. Did I say this? I DNF'd this, and I am unhauling it for sure. I read like 65 pages of this, and then I like skimmed the back to see if maybe like the story progressed in a way that would be worth me going back to the beginning. This has like 2.5 stars on Goodreads, so I am not alone in disliking this story. So I think I said this in my wrap up, I really hate like not being nice to another Holly because that's my name, and I feel like we need to stick together or something. I don't know, it's very weird. I don't know if other people feel that way about their names, but it's fine. Isabel I found to be an incredibly unlikable character, and yes, for me that typically is a deal breaker. I do need to like my main character, and she's not like, it's not that she's just flawed, like she is flawed, but Becky Bloomwood from Confessions of a Shopaholic is flawed, but she's still likable, and she's not like super obnoxious. And Isabel seemed to just like lie and put herself in situations, and this definitely felt like somebody had read Shopaholic and thought that they could write their own book, but didn't take enough time to like really craft their own story and their own characters and make it its own. It's like, it's kind of like, there's a ton of like Twilight fan fiction that has like been published. Excuse me, what are you doing? That has been published as its own fiction, and some of it reads like Twilight fan fiction. Like you can see the source material, like 50 Shades of Grey, especially the first book, 50 Shades of Grey, reads so much like Twilight. Like you can see the E.L. James, what she was doing and like where she was pulling from. But then you have like Wallbanger by Alice Clayton, which also started out as Twilight fan fiction, and I feel like you can't see it really. Like there's like a family group, I guess, but like there really isn't a ton of overlap there. And that's the thing with this, is like you can be inspired by something and you can be motivated by something, but you need to make it your own, and you need to do something with that story. There is eventually, I guess, a romance in here, which from what I read, because there are other books in the series, it seems like some people were like, the romance was kind of like the only redeeming factor, and it's more of like the guy she ends up with is like a really nice guy. So I don't know. Like I said, there's just a ton of lying, and it seems like that just continues, and I'm not sure she really grows. Like unlike Becky, who is, like I said, flawed, and she does continue to like make mistakes and have issues, but she does still grow throughout the Shopaholic series. Like she's not making the same mistakes over and over again, and it kind of seems like Isabel is. So I did not like this, and I definitely am unhauling it. And I almost, I don't know if I've told this story. I think I did in a video once. My grandmother is in a couple book clubs. Earlier this year, she was in a book club and they read this book, and I think it was about Rochester. I don't know if it was fiction or nonfiction. I don't know, but I know it was a book that like all of like, I think it was, I assume like the library book clubs were reading. It was like an all Rochester read. I live in Rochester, New York. And she thought this book was so bad, and it was a library book. She borrowed it from the library. She didn't return it, and she threw it away, or as she says, she recycled it, because she's responsible like that, because she felt nobody else should ever read this book. And she went into the library and she literally told them, so like she paid for the book, because obviously she like didn't return it, so you have to pay for it. She didn't return it, and she told them why she didn't return it, and that it was a horrible book and they shouldn't stock it. And that's almost like how I feel about that. Like it's not that bad. Like I'm sure there are people out there who would enjoy it, but I'm almost like, do I just donate it to the Goodwill? Like I don't want somebody to like pick it up and spend their hard-earned like $2.99 on this book and be disappointed. I don't know, but I don't want to throw it away either. I don't know what I'm gonna do. So then the other physical book I read was One Night in Scotland by Karen Hawkins. I did actually complete this book. I gave it 3 stars. It's historical romance. It is the first book, I think, in her Hearst Amulet series. And it was a pretty, I don't remember a ton about it. It was a pretty standard read. So is this the one? Yeah, I think this one, it felt like I had read like the first 100 pages before, but I don't think I did. So I don't know. It's perfectly average. So this girl, Mary, her brother is like kidnapped, and he is on this adventure, and so she goes to one of his friends to get an artifact that the people are asking for in order to release him from like their hostageness. Words are hard. And so the guy like, but his friend doesn't want to help her. He's suspicious of her. He like locks her in a tower while he's trying to like figure out who she is and if she really is who she says she is and all of this stuff. And then they like fall in love. I don't really have a lot to say about this. It wasn't my favorite thing. I like the overall story. Her brother, Michael, I think is his name, is searching for this amulet that used to belong to their family. And I think that that story is potentially interesting, like the overall arc, but I don't know if I would actually want to read all of the stories. But now that I'm listening to audiobooks more, I might see if maybe my library has the other books on audio, and then I will maybe listen to them, because that, for me personally, reading with my eyeballs is my preferred reading type. So if I can read something with my eyeballs, I want to read something I really, really want to read. And an audiobook is better for me for rereads, so that I'm not taking up my eyeball reading time with rereads and with stuff maybe I'm a little more apprehensive about. So I might do that. Plus, I mean, I read them probably at like the same speed, but audiobooks I can listen to on 2x speed. So something like this I can get through easily in like a day or two. I usually listen like on my way to and from work and stuff. So then the ebooks. So for Throwaway, I think this is by Heather Hoffman, I think is her name. I ended up DNFing this. I think I DNF'd it at 75 pages, which was really disappointing. I will say I did have to read this on my phone because it was a Nook book I had gotten years and years and years ago, and I haven't even turned on my Nook in forever. It's the like first generation Nook. Barnes & Noble hasn't supported it for years, so I don't even know if it would still work. So in order to read a Nook book, I have to read it on my phone, which I really don't like doing. So that was a slight contributing factor, but really it was the story. So the story is about a prostitute, and she ends up wrapped up in some drama with like her pimp, and then she gets into a relationship with a cop. And I think this story had a lot of potential. Like, I like the idea of the story. I love the idea about a story about like a sex worker, but it was just disappointing, which I feel like is what usually happens to me when I read stories like this. I've read stories about like porn actors before looking for the same thing, and I've been disappointed in those as well. There was just a lot of like unbelievable things happening in this story. Like, she had all this money, but then was like trapped, and like I know some of it can be psychological and everything, but it just felt a little weird. And the main character, especially her dialogue, I really didn't like at all. I do think, I was reading reviews later, I think that this story is almost broken up into 2 parts, and the 2 parts are drastically different. It's an ebook, so I still own it, so maybe someday I would try reading it again. If you happen to have read this and you think that it is good and worth me powering through and continuing on with, let me know. And then the last book was Accidental Butterfly, and I cannot remember the author's name. This was kind of like a little novella. It was pretty short. It was like 120 pages or 150 pages or something. And this is, it's basically new adult, but yeah. This features a girl named Kate, and she ends up accidentally killing herself. She accidentally takes some like sleeping medication and overdoses on it, and then she is given a second chance where she can like go to heaven, basically, instead of not heaven. Like, I don't know if it's ever really clear if she helps save somebody else from a similar fate. And so the story is her following this journey with this guy whose name I can't remember. trying to like befriend him and stop him from making like the same mistakes she made. I gave this 3 stars. It was okay, but I think it had a ton more potential. The logistics weren't super clear, like of how these angels, because she meets like a guardian angel and other angels, how that works, and the actual like laws of this universe were not fully clear. Like sometimes things seem to just happen, like, oh, she can like mind read, but like why can she mind read? Like why? Like things would just happen conveniently throughout the story, and not just like magical supernaturally elements, but just like plotting stuff would just suddenly happen. Often not like good things even, like where it was like, you know, somebody coming in and like solving everything. It was more like there would be a story and then like they'd be doing something and it'd be like, well, we need drama now, so like something horrible would happen. And it's like, but it didn't feel like that fit in, I guess. There was also a romance element to the story that I felt detracted from the story. I think this book would have been better served, especially at this length, being just about Kate growing and learning from her past mistakes and not throwing a romance in there. Like there wasn't enough time to like build the romance and show that, and instead I would have preferred that things stay platonic and we see her making friends, which she does make friends, and what that means and what those relationships are, or have the story be longer and have more time to like plant seeds and allow things to grow so that it feels more natural, if that makes sense. So yes, those are my thoughts about the books that I read or did not read for my summer TBR. And I will link my TBR videos down below as well if you want to check them out. It is fall now, so I am doing my fall TBR. I am actually currently reading one of the books on my fall TBR, which is not what I expected at all, which is probably my own fault. I'm not sure it's my kind of story, but it's fine. So yeah, so that is it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!